Agile. I am indeed Polly. I am production manager and a training manager at PBP, and I work as an Agile coach there as well, helping teams to deal with implementing Agile for their everyday life. And I'm going to take us into lunch with a very light-hearted look, sorry, thank you, James, a very light-hearted look at ways you can use Agile methodology in your everyday life. One basic one and one a little bit more out there. I personally could talk about this nonsense for hours, which is why the committee in their infinite wisdom has put me on right before lunch, so that I can't do that. So before I get into the examples, what I mean by Agile, all this stuff, right? All of it. Agile's massive. It's got this gigantic history. It was invented by software developers, spun off in all kinds of directions. You have to know all of this terminology. You have to do all of the ceremonies. You have to jump through all the hoops, and then you rule the world, right? Or deliver working software, at least, which is kind of what it's aimed at. But actually, no. And yeah, sometimes, kind of, if you want. Some of this stuff is useful, but it's not what I'm talking about today. It's way too complicated. Look at the state of it. There's processes and applications and all sorts of stuff up there. And some of you are looking at that and thinking, oh, I hate that bit's not even really Agile. And some of you are thinking, I don't actually know what any of this is. What the heck is any of this stuff? It's really, all it is, it's a mindset. That's all. All the ceremonies, the systems, the processes, the jargon, they're just here to help us keep the mindset in place. Does it always work? No, of course it doesn't always work. Not everything always works. I mean, you can come and find me later if you want me to bore you for hours about why it doesn't always work. But for now, think of it just as a way of thinking. It's aimed at making sure we're doing the best work that we can do, and that we're doing it in the right way, and that we're continually improving the way that we do it. That's all it is. Super simple, right? Okay, all you need to do, inspect and adapt. That's it. Really. All the things on that buzzword slide, they're all things that help us to do this, help us to see if we've done it right, help us to see where it could be better. And what we mean by inspect and adapt is looking at what you're doing or what you've done, seeing where it could be better. Not in an emotional, oh God, my work is dreadful, I hate myself kind of a way, but just a constructive way. Is it as good as it could be? It's probably not, let's face it. It can always be a tiny bit better. Maybe it can be a massive amount better. But we don't worry about the reasons. We don't worry about the justifications. We think about fixes. What small thing can we do to make, hair everywhere, sorry, to make this thing better? It sounds simple, can be amazingly powerful. So we're going to talk about a couple of little things here, which I find really helpful to use Agile in everyday life. One of them, personal projects, because we've all got a million of these, right? The passion projects, the novel that's going to make us famous, the screenplay, the game development that we do outside of work that isn't our actual job. They're fun, they're not like work, so we don't need to manage them like we do work, right? But actually, what if we did manage them like we do work? Maybe they're giant things that need to get done, but they're kind of complicated. We need to move house. We need to get the car serviced. We need to find a new job or plan a holiday or something like that. Whatever it is, you can use inspecting and adapting to make that easier. Look at your project. What have you got to do? Okay, maybe the answer to the first thing is, oh my God, everything, I don't know what I'm doing, help. Don't panic, move on. What are you going to do next? Is it the right thing to be doing next? Because if it's not, maybe you should do that thing instead. Is it small enough to be achievable? How can this thing that I'm looking at be just a tiny bit better than it is right now? How long is it going to take me to make it that tiny bit better? And when am I going to look at it again? Because you're not going to do this loop just once. Every time you do a task, you're going to look at what you have left, you're going to inspect it again, and adapt it if you need to. You're going to go through this loop every single time. So things that you might find interesting, and I'm going to mention a bunch of these things as we go through this talk, and you're going to say, hey, wasn't that on the buzzword slide? I thought you said the buzzword slide wasn't relevant. That's okay. If you're familiar with the process, is great. You can play Agile buzzword bingo in the back there. If not, you really don't need to worry about it. Just focus on inspecting and adapting. But if you get super into this idea, take your personal projects, go wild with it, make a sprint board, make a backlog, set some sprints. What does that look like? Well, it looks like this. This is my personal sprint board for some of the projects that I'm working on at the moment. You can see my play-by-play talk is technically not all done yet. Might be a bit late for that now, but it's pretty simple. I've got to do, I've got next up, which you can't read because of the lens flare. I've got in progress, and I've got done. I don't have a test phase. I'm the only person working on this stuff. I'm the only person that gets to say when it's done. And I don't keep much in my to-do column either. There's not a whole backlog's worth of stuff in there. I can't work with a backlog. I get bogged down in making a giant list, and then I spend all my time working on the list instead of working. And it's easier for me to just think about the next thing that needs to happen. Every time I get time to work on one of these things, I look at what I have to do. How much time do I have? What is the smallest possible thing that can be done in that time? And how am I going to do it? Once it's done, put it in the done column. Dead easy. I keep only one thing in progress at any one time. For those of you playing along, this is a modified form of Kanban. And it's like 2 laughs. Somebody knows Agile. And then I focus. The thing that I have that's next up, you don't normally see that on a sprint board. I inspected my regular sprint board, and then I adapted it because it wasn't working for me. Next up is where I use a queue for next time I come back to this project. Maybe there's been a couple of weeks since I last looked at it. What was the next thing I was planning to do when I left it? And then I can look at that and say, hey, is that actually the right next thing to be doing now? Yes, no, and change up again. And that's all I do with my stuff, really. So it sounds a bit like work. It kind of is a little bit like work. Personal projects are a little bit like work. How do you take Agile and use it for something that's not work-related at all? What if there's more than one person in your personal work team? What if we use Agile for relationships? Okay, so those who know what a retrospective is think I am having a laugh here. No, I'm totally not having a laugh here. My partner and I do this. It works. I know, it's the weirdest. It does work for us, but got to point out, before I give you the keys to this, neither of us are relationship experts. We are not professionally qualified. Do not trust my post-it notes to solve your relationship issues, okay? So, before we get into that, what actually is a retrospective? Okay, so this is one of the key Agile ceremonies. At regular intervals, the team comes together, they discuss their working processes, not the work that they're doing, not the actual tasks, but the way that they work together. They inspect that, and they say, are we working well together? Can we change the way that we work together? So retrospectives are the most powerful thing that you can do as a team. If you're not doing them in your teams, you please really do them. They're great. If you want to know how, come find me afterwards. Every team should be doing them, even relationship teams. Okay, so this sounds terrifying. I know, it's not that bad. I actually have some examples of what a relationship retrospective looks like to show you. One of the things that we stress about the retrospective is that everything that happens in there should be confidential. It should never be shared with anybody outside of the retrospective unless the team agree. Now, clearly I don't have my team partner here with me today, but he has given his consent. And I did actually show him the slides first, so he knows what he's consenting to, which is a good start. So, where do we start? How do you start with a relationship and go, you know what would make this relationship better? Project management. Well, we start where every retrospective starts. We start with the Prime Directive. So we use this at the beginning of every retrospective. You may have used it already in your own team retrospectives if you're running them. If you're not doing them, please do them. And we use it to set the tone at the beginning of every session. So we want to reiterate that we are a team. We're working together, we're doing the best we can, and we're interested in doing better together. So this isn't a blame game, it's not a bitching session. We're not getting together and saying, well, you never took the laundry out. Well, you didn't feed the cat. It's not about that. It's about constructively moving forwards together. And, of course, we never share this with anybody outside that session unless we've got a pre-prepared post-it note with somebody saying, yes, you can do it. So this is what it looked like. This is the questions that we look at. It's easier if you're both massive process nerds like we are. He's also a project manager, so a bit of a head start there. But it's not difficult. You take that unemotional assessing approach that we were talking about earlier, and you apply some of these questions. How are we working together as a team? Does anything need to change? What are we working towards together? Do we have a goal? Why do we want that goal? What will that goal give the team? And have we all agreed on it? What's the next thing that we want to achieve together? How are we going to know how we're doing? How are we going to change if we need to change? And when will we check? Okay, so, bullet points, great, yeah? No emotion involved in bullet points. How does it work in practice? Well, here's our last retrospective. I hope that you can actually read what's going on those post-it notes. But if you can't, I'm happy to give you the slides later. There's a whole bunch of exercises you can do in a retro. I can provide a giant list. If anybody wants one, come see me later. For this session, Viggs chose the exercise good, bad, more, less. So what went well in the last session, what didn't go so well, what do we want to do more of, and what would we like to do less of. We sit together with post-it notes, we write this stuff down, and we put everything that's on our minds on the list. You can see I wrote post-it notes under more of, because we're running out of post-it notes, because we do this really quite often. We go through them, we discuss them, we see if we can identify any themes. So here, I'm the yellow post-it notes, Viggs is the blue post-it notes. You can tell that because his are relentlessly positive, and mine are really not. And I pulled out that one of the things that I thought was happening in this sprint session was that actually we weren't working as a team anymore. We didn't feel like, apart from the general fact of the relationship, we were going in the same direction with the same goals. So we did a lot of talking about that. And actually that turned out to be a theme, because a lot of the things that we have in the positive section are things that we love to do together as a team. We go to painting classes together. We enjoy the time that we spend with our joint friends. So we wanted to look at that session and say, okay, this is clearly a theme. Not having a team spirit is bad for us. Things we do as a team that are great for us, let's do more of those. But we don't have a team goal, we don't have a team identity. What can we do about that? So, you know, because we're so geeky, we made a team identity, and we're now Team Gudgeon. Yes, I'm a project manager and not an artist, but we have a fancy fish. A gudgeon is a sort of a fish. We have a team motto, which is a cheesy prog motto, and Viggs chose that, so, you know, we should blame him there. And we have some sprint goals based around working as a team that we want to go for. So this is an identity we're going to work with in the next period of time between our retrospectives, and we're going to find out how that works for us. And if it's great, fantastic, and if it's not, then we can inspect it and adapt it, because we're not locked into anything, right? We can always inspect and adapt the process. We can change. So we focused for our sprint goals this time on things that would make us feel like we were working together. So we're going to make a chores Kanban with a definition of done, more bingo for those at the back, so that everybody knows exactly what each chore means. Does feed the cat mean just feed the cat, or does it mean make sure there's cat food in the cupboard every time we go shopping, because otherwise the cat's going to be really crabby? You know, how much is encompassed by that chore? I'm in the process of looking for a formal diagnosis of autism right now. So Viggs is going to do a bunch of reading around that, because it's enough for me to do to handle that without teaching him all about that as well, because, you know, why am I carrying both sets of weight here? So the team has made a decision for the whole team to support the member of it that's struggling more. So great. Team unity, we're doing great here. And we're putting some goals on fun, because we're project managers and that's what we do. But actually, for team bonding, it's really important for us to set the time to sit together and do the painting that we love, do the things that we enjoy doing as a team together. So that's our final goal. We haven't set a time to review the sprint yet. I have a suspicious feeling that the sprint will run until those 2 paintings are complete, which could be some considerable time. But it doesn't matter, because when we come back to it, we'll look at these goals, we'll say, hey, how did we do against the goals? Is there anything we need to change? And then maybe we'll change some stuff. And maybe we won't. Either way, we're going to inspect it, and then we're going to adapt it, because we are super agile. So, pretty much running up to lunchtime with perfect timing. It's a mindset, it's not a tool set. Look at everything, especially the bits where you didn't think there was a process to be looked at, and hop off and have fun. If any of you want to try to cram weird agile techniques into your everyday life, come find me after. Thanks very much.